They exiled us as a threat. 50 years later, they begged us to save them. The Galactic Council cast humanity out, and now they plead for humanity's comeback. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched impossibly wide, its obsidian floors polished to mirror perfection, reflecting the artificial sky above that sparkled with holographic representations of 1,000 distant stars. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, a solitary human figure surrounded by a sea of alien dignitaries from 473 worlds. The weight of their collective gaze pressed down on her like a physical force. She had known this day would come. For months, the whispers had echoed through the diplomatic corridors. Humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The other species had grown tired of making excuses for Earth's behavior, tired of humanity's constant questioning of established protocols, tired of their relentless drive to explore, to expand, to challenge every boundary set before them. Counselor Vrath rose from his seat in the highest tier, his crystalline body catching the light and scattering it across the chamber in dancing rainbow patterns. The Vraxians were among the oldest members of the council, their civilization spanning 12,000 years. When Vrath spoke, his voice resonated like a bell struck in a cathedral, commanding absolute attention. Ambassador Chen of Earth, he began, each word carefully measured. You stand before this council as representative of a species that has, in the mere 2 centuries since first contact, demonstrated a persistent and disturbing pattern of behavior that threatens the stability of our galactic community. Sarah kept her face carefully neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed her responses 1,000 times, but preparation couldn't fully shield against the reality of standing alone before the collected judgment of half the galaxy. Counselor Zafina of the Thorian Collective spoke next, her form floating in a sphere of liquid methane, her translation device rendering her chemical communications into standard galactic speech. Your species refuses to acknowledge the boundaries we have established over millennia. You push into restricted zones. You question quarantine protocols. You insist on investigating phenomena that we have long since classified as too dangerous for exploration. We seek knowledge, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite everything. Understanding the universe around us is fundamental to who we are as a species. We cannot simply accept because we say so as justification for arbitrary restrictions. A ripple of discontent moved through the assembled delegates. The Keeper of the Void in the north section shifted, its form flickering between visible and invisible dimensions, and when it spoke, reality itself seemed to bend around its words. Arbitrary? The Keeper's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. These protocols were written in the blood of civilizations that learned too late the cost of curiosity, without wisdom. The quarantine zones exist because what lies within them nearly destroyed this galaxy 3 times over. The expansion limits exist because unchecked growth has led to wars that consumed entire star clusters. Sarah took a deep breath. And humanity acknowledges the wisdom in learning from history. But we also believe that progress requires pushing boundaries. Every great discovery, every advancement that has benefited this council, came from someone willing to challenge what everyone else accepted as unchangeable truth. Progress, Vrath said, and somehow he made the word sound like an accusation. Your progress has destabilized 17 established trade routes. Your progress resulted in a diplomatic incident with the Krell Dominion that nearly sparked a war. Your progress led to the Tau Ceti incident, where your scientists breached containment protocols and released an anomaly that took us 3 months to resecure. The Tau Ceti anomaly was contained with 0 casualties because human ingenuity found a solution your protocols said was impossible, Sarah countered. Our scientists didn't just breach containment, they discovered that your containment method was fundamentally flawed and was going to fail within the year regardless of our intervention. We prevented a catastrophe, not caused one. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, translation devices struggling to keep pace with the babel of languages and communication methods. Vrath struck his crystalline staff against the floor and the resulting tone silenced everyone immediately. Enough, he declared. This debate has raged for months in closed sessions. The vote has been taken. The decision is made. He paused, and in that silence, Sarah felt the future of her entire species teetering on a knife's edge. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All treaties are dissolved. All trade agreements are nullified. You have 1 standard year to withdraw from all council-controlled systems and return to your home system of Sol. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Around her, the chamber buzzed with approval from some quarters, shocked murmurs from others. A few delegates, the Andrathi, the Quillen, looked genuinely distressed, but they were a minority. You're casting us out? Sarah's voice carried across the chamber, cutting through the noise. After everything humanity has contributed, after we helped the Vraxians resolve their stellar engineering crisis, after we provided the medical breakthrough that saved the Thorian nursery worlds, after we stood beside the Andrathi when the Void Raiders attacked their colony, all of which, Vrath replied coldly, does not outweigh the fundamental incompatibility between human nature and the peaceful coexistence this council requires. You are not being punished, Ambassador. You are being quarantined. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when your species has matured, we may revisit this decision. Sarah looked around at the assembled aliens, seeing fear in some faces, relief in others, calculation in still more. They didn't see humanity's potential. They saw a threat to their comfortable, stagnant order. Very well, she said, finally straightening her shoulders. Humanity will withdraw from council space as ordered. But understand this, you're not quarantining us. You're releasing us from the limitations you've placed on our development. And I promise you, Counselor Vrath, you will regret this decision. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Vrath's crystalline features somehow conveyed disdain. No, Sarah replied with a cold smile. It's a prediction. When you need us, and you will remember that you were the ones who chose to push us away. She turned and walked from the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind her, she could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her departure. None of them spoke. None of them called her back. The decision was final. As the massive doors sealed behind her, Sarah allowed herself one moment of weakness, one shuddering breath that was almost a sob. Then she straightened, pulled out her communicator, and opened a channel to Earth. This is Ambassador Chen, she said quietly. Operation Exodus is a go. Bring our people home, all of them. And tell the director we need to initiate Protocol Prometheus immediately. On the other end of the line, after a long pause, came the response. Understood, Ambassador. Humanity stands alone now. No, Sarah corrected, looking back at the sealed doors one last time. Humanity stands free. The human colonies scattered across council space began their withdrawal within days of the verdict. From the mining stations of the Perseid Belt to the agricultural worlds of the Carina Arm, from the research outposts studying neutron stars to the diplomatic embassies on 100 different worlds, humanity packed up 2 centuries of presence and began the long journey home. It was not a simple task. 47 worlds hosted human populations. Hundreds of stations and outposts needed to be evacuated. Thousands of research projects had to be abandoned or relocated. Trade relationships built over generations dissolved overnight. And through it all, the Galactic Council watched with what could only be described as nervous anticipation, as if they expected humanity to lash out, to refuse, to fight. But humanity did none of those things. They withdrew peacefully, methodically, and completely. They honored every treaty clause, paid every outstanding debt, fulfilled every contractual obligation. By all appearances, they accepted their exile with grace and dignity. What the Council didn't see was what happened in the shadows of that exodus. What they didn't notice was the vast quantities of data humanity carried away with them, scans of forbidden zones, readings from restricted phenomena, observations that technically violated a dozen different protocols but had never been explicitly discovered. What they couldn't detect was the quiet conversations between human diplomats and a select few alien sympathizers, the Andrathian Quillen and others who saw the Council's decision for the mistake it was. Dr. Marcus Webb oversaw the evacuation of the Helix Research Station, humanity's most advanced astrophysics facility, located near the edge of Council space. As he watched the last cargo transport depart, carrying equipment and data cores worth more than some planets' entire economies, he couldn't help but smile. They think they're getting rid of a problem, his colleague Dr. Yuki Tanaka said, standing beside him at the observation window. They don't realize they're creating one. Protocol Prometheus is already ahead of schedule, Marcus replied. 6 months, maybe 8, and we'll have the first prototype ready. Protocol Prometheus is already ahead of schedule, Marcus replied. 6 months, maybe 8, and we'll have the first prototype ready. Without Council restrictions hamstringing our research, without having to justify every experiment to a committee that thinks risk is a four-letter word. We're either going to achieve something incredible, Yuki finished, or blow ourselves up spectacularly. Well, Marcus said with a grin, humanity has always been an all-or-nothing species. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human military forces withdrew from joint defense stations, but not before downloading every tactical database they could access. Human traders closed their businesses in alien ports, but not before establishing encrypted communication networks that would survive outside Council jurisdiction. Human scientists abandoned collaborative projects, but not before ensuring they had copies of every crucial piece of research. And on Earth, in the halls of the unified government, Director General James Morrison assembled the greatest minds humanity had to offer and gave them a simple directive. The Council thinks we're dangerous now? Show them what dangerous really looks like. Show them what humanity can achieve when we're not holding ourselves back to make them comfortable. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Research programs that had been shelved for being too risky, too aggressive, too likely to upset alien sensibilities, all of them were reopened. Military projects that violated Council restrictions on weapons development went into full production. Exploratory missions into regions the Council had declared off-limits were planned and launched. Humanity didn't just accept their exile. They embraced it. The year of withdrawal passed quickly. As the deadline approached, the Council sent observers to ensure humanity's compliance. They found every human evacuated from Council space, every station abandoned, every diplomatic channel closed. The observers reported back humanity had obeyed. The quarantine was complete. What they didn't report because they didn't know to look for it was the fleet of automated research vessels humanity had left, scattered throughout the galaxy, disguised as abandoned equipment, or the network of quantum communication relays hidden inside what appeared to be navigation beacons, or the sleeper agents, non-human allies who owed humanity debts and were willing to serve as eyes and ears inside Council space. On the final day, as the last human vessel crossed from Council space into the Sol system, Sarah Chen transmitted one last message to the Council. This is Ambassador Chen, transmitting from the border of Sol space. Humanity has complied with all terms of our expulsion. We are now beyond your jurisdiction. But let me leave you with one final thought. You've just given the most ambitious, most innovative, most relentlessly curious species in the galaxy a reason to prove you wrong. You've given us freedom from your rules and a powerful motivation to exceed your expectations. I hope you're prepared for what comes next. Chen out. Counselor Vrath received the message in his private chambers. He read it 3 times, feeling something he hadn't felt in centuries: doubt. Then he dismissed it. Humanity was gone. The galaxy was stable again. Whatever they did in their isolated system was no longer the Council's concern. It was the greatest miscalculation in galactic history. 20 years passed. Then 30. Then 50. The Galactic Council moved on with its business, and humanity became a footnote in recent history. A cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. Young species joining the Council heard the story of Earth as a warning. This is what happens when you refuse to respect boundaries. But in the shadows of galactic politics, among those who paid attention to such things, whispers began to circulate. Strange energy signatures detected from the direction of Sol space readings that didn't match any known technology. Reports from trading ships that ventured too close to the quarantine boundary of unusual vessels, sleek and fast, that appeared on sensors and then vanished before they could be properly scanned. Stories from independent colonies on the galactic rim about humans trading in technologies that shouldn't exist. The Council dismissed these reports as rumors, as impossible. They had cut off humanity's access to the advanced knowledge base of galactic civilization. Without the Council's guidance, humanity should have stagnated, should have remained limited to the relatively primitive technology they possessed at the time of their exile. They were spectacularly wrong. Free from Council restrictions, humanity had exploded into innovation. The forbidden technologies they'd been prevented from researching, they not only researched them but improved upon them. The dangerous zones they'd been barred from exploring, they explored them and learned their secrets. The protocols that limited weapons development, that restricted AI research, that prohibited genetic engineering, that forbade dimensional physics, all of them became guidelines that humanity enthusiastically ignored. Dr. Marcus Webb, now 70 years old and the director of the Prometheus Institute, stood in a laboratory that would have given the Galactic Council nightmares. Around him, holographic displays showed schematics for technology that broke at least 40 different council prohibitions. The first test of the Alcubierre Prometheus drive is scheduled for tomorrow, his assistant informed him. If it works as theorized, we'll be able to cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. And the quantum Ansible network? Marcus asked. Operational across 1,500 systems. Instantaneous communication across any distance. The Council's light-speed limited networks will look like tin cans and string by comparison. Marcus nodded, moving to another display. What about Project Chimera? The first generation of enhanced humans is reaching maturity. Stronger, faster, smarter than baseline humans, but more importantly, capable of surviving in environments that would kill regular humans. We could colonize anything from gas giants to neutron star surfaces if we wanted to. And the AI cores, fully sentient, fully loyal, and fully integrated into our military and research networks. Each one has more processing power than the entire Council's computational network. Marcus smiled. The Council thought they were quarantining a dangerous child. They didn't realize they were giving a tiger time to grow claws. He looked up at the holographic display of the galaxy, at the vast expanse of space beyond their little bubble. Are we ready? For what, sir? For the next phase. It's been 50 years. Time to remind the galaxy that humanity still exists. But before humanity could reveal itself, the galaxy had other plans. The first reports came from the Galactic Rim, entire colonies going silent. Investigation teams finding nothing but ruins. Then more colonies disappeared. Then settled worlds. Something was sweeping through the outer regions, something that destroyed everything in its path. The Council, for the first time in 1,000 years, faced an existential threat. They called it the consumption, a swarm of artificial entities that converted all matter and energy into more of themselves. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how to stop them. Every weapon the Council used against them failed. Every defense crumbled. Every strategy proved useless. The consumption swept through the galaxy like a wave of annihilation, and the Council, for all its age and wisdom, was powerless to stop it. In the Council chambers, now half empty as species after species fell to the swarm, Councillor Vrath, now impossibly old even by Vraxian standards, faced the terrible truth. They were going to lose. In another few years, maybe less, the consumption would reach the core worlds, and then there would be nothing left. There must be something we haven't tried, he said desperately, looking around at the diminished Council. Some weapon, some strategy. Councillor Zephina, her containment sphere showing cracks from age and stress, spoke quietly. There is one option we haven't considered. What? We could ask humanity for help. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Vrath laughed, a bitter sound like breaking glass. Humanity? The species we exiled 50 years ago? You think they would help us? You think they even could? I think, said Councillor Rashan of the Andrathi, one of the few species that had maintained secret contact with humanity, that you have no idea what humanity has become in the time we've ignored them. And I think we are arrogant fools if we let pride kill us when there's even a chance they could help. Vrath slumped in his seat, suddenly looking every one of his 12,000 years. Even if we asked, why would they answer? Why would they save the very council that cast them out? There's only one way to find out, Safina replied. The vote was taken. It was unanimous. The council, in what might be its final act, would send an envoy to Sol Space to request humanity's aid. They selected Rashan to carry the message. The Andrathi had always been friendly with humanity. If anyone could convince them to help, it would be him. As his ship approached the Sol system, bypassing the quarantine boundary that had stood for 50 years, Rashan wondered what he would find. Would humanity even be there? Would they have destroyed themselves with their unrestricted experimentation? Would they be angry, vengeful, eager to watch their former oppressors burn? What he found was beyond anything he could have imagined. Rashan's vessel was intercepted exactly 3 light minutes from the edge of Sol's heliosphere. One moment his sensors showed empty space. The next 5 ships surrounded him, ships unlike anything he'd ever seen. They were sleek, angular, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. His computer couldn't even properly classify their configuration. They simply appeared, as if they'd stepped out of another dimension, which, he would learn later, they had. Andrathi vessel. This is Captain Jennifer Zhao of the Terran Defense Fleet ship Prometheus. You are entering restricted space. State your business. The voice was calm, professional, utterly confident. This is Counselor Rashan of the Andrathi delegation, he responded, his translator rendering his bioluminescent communication into standard speech. I come bearing an official message from the Galactic Council to the government of Earth. It is a matter of galactic survival. A pause. Then stand by for escort, Counselor. Follow our lead and do not deviate from the prescribed course. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate neutralization. Rashan's ship was guided into the Sol system, and what he saw made his minds reel. The system had been transformed. Mars was green, actively being terraformed, its surface showing cities and vegetation where once there had been only rust-red desert. Venus was enclosed in a massive orbital structure that was somehow cooling the planet and making it habitable. The asteroid belt had been extensively mined, and in its place floated hundreds of massive habitats and industrial platforms. But it was the structure around Earth that truly staggered him. A ring, no multiple rings, orbital platforms connected by what looked like space elevators surrounding the entire planet. Energy readings that dwarfed anything the Council had ever produced. And everywhere, ships, thousands of them, from small fighters to vessels that rivaled Council dreadnoughts in size. This was not the humanity that had been exiled 50 years ago. This was something new, something powerful, something that made even the ancient Council look primitive by comparison. He was taken to a meeting chamber on one of the orbital platforms. The room was simple compared to the grand chamber of the Council, but there was something about it that spoke of quiet confidence, of strength that didn't need to be ostentatious. Director General Morrison, grandson of the James Morrison who had overseen humanity's transformation, entered the room. He was young, barely 50, but his eyes held the weight of command. Counselor Rashan, Morrison said, his tone polite but not warm. Welcome to Sol Space. My grandfather spoke well of you. He said you were one of the few in the Council who voted against our expulsion. I was, Rashan admitted. For what little good it did. Director General, I come bearing a plea for help. The galaxy is dying, consumed by a force we cannot stop. The consumption has destroyed hundreds of worlds. Thousands of species face extinction. We have exhausted every option available to us. He paused, the difficulty of what came next evident. The Council formally requests humanity's assistance. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. The Council requests our help, he said finally. The same Council that declared us too dangerous to exist among civilized species. The same Council that expelled us from galactic society. The same Council that has for 50 years maintained a quarantine around our system, as if we were a disease to be contained. He leaned forward. Counselor, why in the name of all that's holy would we help you? Rashan had expected anger, expected demands for concessions or reparations. What he heard instead was genuine curiosity, as if Morrison truly wanted to understand the Council's reasoning. Because despite everything, Rashan said slowly, you are still fundamentally good. Because humanity, for all its faults, has never been able to stand by and watch innocents suffer when they had the power to help. Because I believe that even though the Council wronged you, you won't visit our sins upon the billions of innocent beings who will die if the consumption isn't stopped. Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're betting the fate of the galaxy on humanity's compassion? After you spent 2 centuries telling us we were too aggressive, too violent, too dangerous? He stood and walked to a window overlooking Earth. Do you want to know what we've been doing for the last 50 years, Counselor? Yes, Rashan said quietly. We've been preparing for this exact moment. Oh, not this specific scenario, but the inevitable moment when the Council would realize they needed us. We've been developing technologies your protocols forbid. We've been exploring regions your laws declare off limits. We've been pushing every boundary, breaking every rule, doing everything you exiled us for doing, only now we've been doing it without anyone holding us back. He turned to face Rashan. We've been becoming the weapon you always feared we were. And now? Rashan asked. Now the question is whether that weapon points at you or at your enemies. Morrison returned to his seat. Tell me about the consumption. Everything you know. Rashan spent the next hour detailing everything: the swarm's first appearance, its capabilities, the failed attempts to stop it, the projected timeline for complete galactic annihilation. Morrison listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a holographic display. When Rashawn finished, Morrison was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I need to consult with my government and our military leadership. You'll be provided quarters and full hospitality. We'll have an answer for you within 48 hours. 48 hours? Rashawn was shocked. The council deliberated for 3 months before making the decision to contact you. How can you possibly? Because humanity doesn't waste time on political posturing when lives are at stake, Morrison interrupted. We'll give you our answer in 2 days, counselor. I suggest you use that time to rest. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. As Rashawn was escorted to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to occur. Humanity had changed in ways the council couldn't have predicted. The question now was whether that change would save the galaxy or doom it. In a secured conference room, Morrison assembled the Joint Chiefs, the Science Council, and the President of the Unified Earth Government. Holographic representations of colony governors and fleet admirals filled the remaining seats. Opinions? Morrison asked simply. Admiral Chen, daughter of the Sarah Chen, who had stood before the council 50 years ago, spoke first. From a military perspective, we can help. The consumption is dangerous, but it's also predictable. It's a swarm intelligence with no strategic thinking, just overwhelming numbers and rapid reproduction. Our AI cores have already run simulations. We have at least 3 viable strategies for stopping it. From a political perspective, President Elena Rodriguez added, this is an opportunity to completely reshape galactic order. If we save the council, we do so on our terms. No more exile. No more restrictions. We become equals or more. Dr. Marcus Webb, now ancient but still sharp, spoke last. From a moral perspective, we don't have a choice. The consumption won't stop at the council. If it consumes the galaxy, it will eventually come here. We're not saving them. We're saving ourselves. The fact that it also saves trillions of innocent lives is just a bonus. Morrison nodded. I agree with all of you. We're going to help, but not as supplicants returning to beg forgiveness. We're going to show them exactly what humanity has become. We're going to save them so thoroughly, so completely that they'll never question our place in the galaxy again. He smiled. Prepare the fleet, all of it. We're going to war. 2 days later, Rashawn was summoned back to the conference room. Director General Morrison stood beside a holographic display of the galaxy, the red spread of the consumption clearly visible, now covering nearly a third of known space. Counselor Rashawn, Morrison began without preamble, humanity will assist in stopping the consumption. However, we have conditions. Name them, Rashawn said quickly, relief flooding through him. First, all charges and restrictions against humanity are permanently lifted. Second, humanity receives full council membership with all rights and privileges, including access to all council databases and territories. Third, 3 council seats will be permanently reserved for human representatives. And fourth, Morrison paused, the quarantine protocols are to be reviewed and revised. The very restrictions that you believed made the galaxy safe actually left you unprepared for this threat. That changes, Rashawn didn't hesitate. I don't have the authority to agree to all of that, but I will recommend the council accept every term. You're saving us. The least we can do is welcome you back. Good. Morrison gestured and the holographic display changed, showing ship configurations and strategic plans. Then let me show you how humanity wages war. 1 week later, the human fleet entered council space. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, 300 warships, ranging from frigates to the massive dreadnought Terra's Fury, flanked by support vessels, carrier ships holding thousands of fighters, and science vessels equipped with technology that would revolutionize galactic warfare. But it wasn't the numbers that shocked the council observers. It was the capability. The human ships moved faster than anything in the council fleet, their drives bending space in ways that shouldn't be possible. Their weapons fired coherent dark energy, antimatter torpedoes, and something the humans called quantum disruption beams that simply ceased matter from existing. Their shields were multi-layered, adaptive, seemingly impervious to the consumption's usual tactics. Admiral Chen commanded the fleet from the bridge of the Prometheus, the same name as the ship that had escorted Rashawn's vessel. But this was the flagship, a vessel that dwarfed even council dreadnoughts. Around her, her crew worked with the efficiency of a machine, integrated with AI coprocessors that allowed them to react at speeds biological beings shouldn't be capable of. Approaching the consumption front lines, her tactical officer reported. Council forces are falling back. They've lost 3 more worlds in the last week. Open a channel to all Council vessels in the sector, Chen ordered. Channel open, Admiral. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. All Council vessels are ordered to fall back to the coordinates we're transmitting. Establish a defensive perimeter and do not engage the consumption. We'll handle this. She paused, then added with a slight smile. Humanity has returned to the galaxy, and we brought presents. The human fleet advanced into the teeth of the consumption swarm, millions of the artificial entities, each no larger than a human fist but collectively massing more than entire planets, surged toward the newcomers with the mindless hunger that had destroyed hundreds of worlds. The humans opened fire. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries. The human fleet didn't just fight the consumption. They dismantled it with surgical precision. Quantum disruption beams carved through the swarm, each shot causing cascading failures that destroyed thousands of entities. Antimatter torpedoes created explosions that incinerated entire sections of the swarm. And then the humans deployed their secret weapon. Launch the purge drones, Chen ordered. From the carrier vessels, a new kind of entity emerged. These were AI constructs, each containing a digital virus specifically designed to infiltrate and corrupt the consumption's networked intelligence. They dove into the swarm, and where they touched, the consumption began to turn on itself, its own entities attacking each other as their programming became corrupted. Within 6 hours, the swarm that had threatened to consume the galaxy was in full retreat. Within 12, it was fragmented and defenseless. Within 24, the human fleet had destroyed the last remnants of the consumption in the sector. On the Council flagship, Councillor Vrath watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated what they had become. The species they had exiled as too dangerous had just saved them with such overwhelming force that it was almost casual. "Get me a communication channel to Admiral Chen," he said, quietly to his communications officer. Moments later, Admiral Chen's image appeared on his view screen. She looked tired but triumphant, and Vrath saw in her eyes the same determination he had seen in Ambassador Sarah Chen 50 years ago. "Councillor Vrath," Chen said, and there was a weight of history in those words. "Admiral Chen," Vrath replied. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, He paused, struggling with words for the first time in centuries. "Thank you. You saved us. After everything we did to your people, you saved us." "We didn't do it for you," Chen replied bluntly. "We did it because it was right. Because allowing genocide on a galactic scale was unacceptable. Because humanity, despite what you believed about us, has always fought to protect innocent life." She leaned forward. "But let's be clear, Counselor. This changes everything. The galaxy you knew, the comfortable order you maintained, it's over. Humanity is back and we're not leaving again." Vrath nodded slowly. "I understand. The Council will accept Director General Morrison's terms. All of them. You've earned that right," he paused. "I was wrong about your species, Admiral. We were all wrong. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from you. In truth, we needed protecting and only you could provide it. We're not saviors, Counselor," Chen said. "We're just humans. Flawed, ambitious, dangerous humans who happen to care more about doing the right thing than following the rules. Remember that going forward." The channel closed and Vrath sat in silence, contemplating the future. Humanity had proven themselves beyond any doubt. The question now was what kind of galaxy would emerge from this crucible. The war against the consumption lasted another 3 months. With humanity leading the charge, the tide turned decisively. The human fleet, coordinated by AI cores and armed with technologies that broke every previous understanding of physics, hunted down and eliminated every remnant of the swarm. But humanity didn't just fight. They taught. Human military advisors integrated with Council forces, showing them new tactics, new strategies. Human engineers retrofitted Council ships with improved weapons and shields. Human scientists shared research that let the Council begin developing their own versions of humanity's innovations. It was this last point that caused the greatest upheaval. By sharing their technology, humanity demonstrated that the Council's restrictions hadn't been about safety, they'd been about control. Every dangerous technology humanity had developed could be used safely with proper understanding. Every forbidden field of research yielded discoveries that benefited everyone. The Council's entire philosophical foundation cracked under the weight of this revelation. 6 months after the war ended, a new session of the Galactic Council convened. The chamber had been repaired from battle damage, its ancient structure restored. But the council itself was forever changed. Humanity now sat in the highest tier, 3 representatives occupying seats of equal status with the most ancient species. Director General Morrison, Admiral Chen, and Ambassador James Reed, grandson of the original architect of Protocol Prometheus, represented Earth and its colonies. Councillor Vrath, somehow looking older and more worn despite his crystalline body, called the session to order. This council convenes to ratify the Treaty of New Beginnings, which will govern galactic civilization going forward. All in favor of accepting the treaty as written. The vote was unanimous. The Treaty of New Beginnings did more than just readmit humanity to the Council. It fundamentally restructured galactic governance, removing the most restrictive protocols, opening up vast regions of space to exploration, and establishing principles of innovation and progress as core values alongside stability and peace. Then it is done, Vrath declared. A new era begins. He looked directly at Morrison. Director General, you have proven that humanity's exile was the greatest mistake this council has ever made. I formally apologize on behalf of this body and my civilization for the injustice we committed against your people. Morrison stood, his presence commanding despite his relatively young age compared to most council members. Councillor Vrath, we accept your apology, but let me be clear about something. Humanity didn't fight the consumption to earn your approval or to prove you wrong. We fought because it was necessary, because when we see a threat to innocent life, we act. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. He gestured to the assembled council. For 2 centuries you tried to make us fit into your vision of what a civilized species should be. You wanted us to be cautious, conservative, to respect boundaries that had no justification beyond that's how it's always been. And when we wouldn't conform, you cast us out. But here's what you failed to understand. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military might. It's our refusal to accept that something is impossible just because it's never been done before. It's our insistence on asking why not. And when everyone else says why bother, it's our conviction that progress requires risk, that safety without growth is just slow death. He paused, looking around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces, some familiar, some new. You thought you were quarantining a dangerous child. What you actually did was force us to grow up faster, to push harder, to become something greater than we might have been under your restrictions. You gave us the greatest gift possible: freedom to fail, freedom to succeed, and freedom to define ourselves on our own terms. Ambassador Reed stood beside Morrison. The Treaty of New Beginnings is aptly named, but understand that this is not humanity returning to the fold. This is the galaxy recognizing that there are multiple paths to civilization, and that diversity of approach makes us all stronger. The Council's old way caution above all, restriction as default, innovation as threat, that way nearly got you all killed. Admiral Chen added her voice. My grandmother stood in this chamber 50 years ago and heard you declare humanity incompatible with galactic peace. She told you that you would regret casting us out, that you would need us. She was right. But she also said something else, something I want you all to remember. Chen pulled up a holographic recording, and suddenly the chamber was filled with the image of Ambassador Sarah Chen from 5 decades past. The recording played her final words. You're not quarantining us. You're releasing us from the limitations you've placed on our development, and I promise you, Councillor Vrath, you will regret this decision. The recording faded and Admiral Chen continued. My grandmother died 10 years ago. But before she passed, she told me something. She said that the Council's greatest mistake wasn't exiling humanity. It was believing that exile would diminish us. She said that one day we would return, and when we did, it would be on our terms, not as supplicants, but as equals who had proven beyond doubt that humanity's way works. Morrison stepped forward again. This treaty marks humanity's return, yes, but it also marks the Council's evolution. You're not just accepting us. You're accepting the principle that drove us. That intelligent beings should be free to explore, to experiment, to push boundaries, because that's how civilizations advance. The restrictions you maintained for millennia weren't protecting you. They were suffocating you, leaving you unprepared for real threats like the consumption. Counselor Zafina of the Thorian Collective spoke up, her voice carrying through the translation systems. Director General Morrison, you are correct. We see that now. But we also worry. If we remove all restrictions, if we allow every species the freedom humanity used, will we not create a galaxy of chaos? Will we not see conflicts as different approaches clash? Probably, Morrison admitted bluntly, and shocked murmurs ran through the chamber. Progress is messy. Freedom means the freedom to make mistakes, to have conflicts, to struggle. But it also means the freedom to find solutions we never imagined. To achieve breakthroughs that change everything. To face challenges with creativity instead of just following ancient protocols that may no longer apply. He smiled slightly. You're afraid of chaos. Humanity learned to embrace it. Not recklessly, we're not suicidal, but as a necessary component of growth. Yes, there will be conflicts. Yes, there will be failures. But there will also be wonders. And when the next existential threat appears, because there will always be a next one, the galaxy will be ready because we'll have spent our time growing stronger instead of just hiding behind rules. The Keeper of the Void, that ancient being whose form flickered between dimensions, spoke next. Its voice carried the weight of eons. Human Morrison speaks wisdom that this keeper has forgotten. We became old, and in our age we mistook caution for wisdom and restriction for safety. The consumption proved we were wrong. It swept through our carefully ordered galaxy like it was nothing, because we had grown soft, complacent, convinced that our ancient ways were the only ways. The keeper's form solidified for a moment. And for the first time in recorded history, council members could see its true appearance, something beautiful and terrifying beyond description. This keeper votes to accept not just the treaty but the philosophy behind it. Humanity has reminded us of a truth we had forgotten. Civilizations that stop growing start dying. We were dying. You saved us. For that you have our eternal gratitude and respect. Vrath rose from his seat, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into 1,000 rainbows. Then let us formalize what we all understand. Humanity, you are not just welcome back into the council. You are recognized as leaders, as teachers, as the species that reminded us all what it means to be truly alive. Your seat in this chamber is permanent. Your voice will be heard with the same weight as the most ancient among us. And your way, the human way of constant striving, questioning, and pushing forward that becomes part of our new galactic culture. He turned to address the entire assembly. This council formally declares the age of caution ended. We enter now the age of renewal, where exploration, innovation, and calculated risk are not just permitted but encouraged. Where the question, why, is answered not with because the protocols say so, but with actual reasoning. Where species are free to grow, to develop, to become more than they were. The chamber erupted in a mixture of approval and concern. Change on this scale was unprecedented in council history, but the alternative had been extinction, and everyone present knew it. Morrison raised his hand for silence, and remarkably the chamber quieted. In just 6 months, humanity had earned that kind of respect. One more thing, he said. Humanity will share all our technological advances with the council. Everything we developed during our exile, every innovation, every breakthrough, it's all available. But not for free. Tension rippled through the chamber. Vrath's crystalline features somehow conveyed concern. What is your price, Director General? Partnership, Morrison replied simply. We share our technology. You share your knowledge. We teach you our methods. You teach us your history. We show you how to innovate. You show us the mistakes you made so we can avoid them. This isn't about human dominance. It's about building something better together. Combining humanity's drive with the Council's accumulated wisdom. He gestured broadly. The galaxy is bigger than any of us realized. We've barely explored a fraction of it. The consumption came from somewhere beyond known space, which means there's an entire universe out there we know nothing about. There will be other threats, other challenges, other wonders. Humanity proposes that instead of fearing them, we face them together. As a united galactic civilization that values both wisdom and innovation, Ambassador Reed added, we're also proposing a new initiative, the Frontier Exploration Program. Joint human-alien crews pushing into unexplored space, investigating phenomena we don't understand, establishing contact with new species. No more arbitrary boundaries, no more forbidden zones unless there's a proven, demonstrable danger, and even then we study that danger instead of just hiding from it. It's ambitious, Admiral Chen said. It's risky. It's going to cause problems and conflicts and failures. It's also going to be glorious. It's going to define the next era of galactic civilization, and humanity wants all of you to be part of it. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members worried about moving too fast, about abandoning safety measures that had served for millennia. Others, particularly younger species and those who had suffered most under the old restrictions, enthusiastically supported the new direction. In the end, the vote was decisive. 402 species in favor, 68 against, 3 abstaining. The age of renewal was officially begun. As the council session concluded and representatives filed out, Vrath approached Morrison privately. The ancient Vraxian and the young human stood together, looking out at the holographic display of the galaxy, a galaxy that had been saved and was now being reborn. "I am 12,000 years old," Vrath said quietly. "I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed wonders and horrors beyond description. And in all that time I have never been as wrong about anything as I was about humanity." Morrison chuckled. "You weren't entirely wrong. We are dangerous. We do push boundaries. We do challenge established order. Everything you accused us of was true." "Yes," Vrath agreed. "But what I failed to understand was that those traits aren't flaws. They're features. They're exactly what the galaxy needed even if we couldn't see it. We were so busy trying to maintain stability that we forgot why we wanted stability in the first place: to protect life, to allow civilizations to flourish. But we had created a stability that was really stagnation. You broke that stagnation and now the galaxy grows again," Morrison finished. "For what it's worth, Counselor, I don't think you were entirely wrong either. Caution has its place. Wisdom has value. The Council's accumulated knowledge saved humanity from making countless mistakes during our first 2 centuries in space. The problem wasn't your wisdom, it was your unwillingness to let that wisdom evolve." Vrath's crystalline form somehow conveyed a smile. "You are gracious, Director General. More gracious than we deserve after what we did to your people." "We're past that now," Morrison said firmly. "Humanity doesn't hold grudges when there's work to be done. And there's so much work ahead, the consumption might be defeated. But my scientists estimate there are at least 50 other potential existential threats in observable space. Plus whatever lies beyond. If we're going to survive as a galactic civilization, we need to be stronger, smarter, more unified than we've ever been." "Then let us begin," Vrath said. "Together." They shook hands, or rather, Morrison shook the crystalline appendage Vrath extended, and in that gesture, 50 years of exile and resentment officially ended. Ambassador Sarah Chen II stood in the observation deck of the CSS Unity, the flagship of the combined Galactic fleet. She was the great-granddaughter of the original Ambassador Sarah Chen, and she carried her ancestor's name with pride. Outside the viewport, the galaxy sprawled in all its glory, a galaxy transformed. 50 years after humanity's return, the changes were visible everywhere. Human technology had spread throughout Council space, adapted and improved by hundreds of different species. The quantum Ansible network connected thousands of worlds in real-time communication. Advanced drive systems had cut travel time across the galaxy to mere weeks. Collaborative research stations pushed the boundaries of physics, biology, and consciousness itself. But more than the technology, it was the culture that had changed. The Age of Renewal had lived up to its name. Species that had stagnated for millennia were innovating again. Young civilizations were embraced and taught rather than restricted and controlled. The Frontier Exploration Program had discovered 17 new civilizations, 300 habitable worlds, and phenomena that rewrote the textbooks. Quite a view, isn't it? Dr. Marcus Webb III joined her at the viewport. He was barely 30, but he'd already made breakthroughs in dimensional physics that his legendary great-grandfather would have envied. "It is," Sarah agreed. "I was just thinking about my great-grandmother, about what she would think if she could see this." "I think she'd say, 'I told you so,'" Marcus replied with a grin. "The Council cast humanity out and we came back stronger. They thought they were punishing us and they actually liberated us. It's almost poetic. Director General Morrison used to say that the Council gave us the greatest gift possible, the motivation to prove them wrong," Sarah said. "Everything we achieved during the exile, everything we've accomplished since returning, it all stems from that moment 50 years ago, when they told us we weren't good enough." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't exiled us?" Marcus asked. Sarah considered the question. "I think we would have stayed comfortable. We would have continued to grow, but within the boundaries they set for us, we would have been less. The exile forced us to either succeed spectacularly or fail completely. There was no middle ground, no safe path. And humanity has never been good at playing it safe anyway. She gestured at the viewport. Look at what we've built together. Humans and Vraxians cooperating on stellar engineering projects. Humans and Thorians developing new medical technologies. Humans and Keepers exploring dimensional physics. The galaxy isn't divided into them and us anymore. It's just us working together toward common goals. Well, mostly, Marcus corrected. There are still tensions. The Krell Dominion still doesn't trust us. The Outer Rim species think we're moving too fast. And there's always someone predicting that human ambition will destroy everything. There will always be critics, Sarah acknowledged. But the difference now is that those critics have to compete in the marketplace of ideas, instead of just imposing their will through council authority. If someone thinks we're moving too fast, they have to make a convincing argument rather than just appealing to ancient protocols. An alert sounded, and both of them turned as Captain Lee entered the observation deck. Ambassador, Doctor, we're approaching the Nexus. Thought you'd want to see this. The Nexus was humanity's boldest project yet. A collaborative effort involving 50 species to build a gateway that would allow instant travel to other galaxies. It was ambitious to the point of insanity, potentially dangerous and absolutely fascinating. In other words, it was exactly the kind of project that defined the new galactic culture. As the Unity dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the Nexus came into view. It was massive, a construct of interwoven technologies from dozens of civilizations, anchored around a precisely calibrated quantum singularity. Thousands of ships and stations surrounded it, and the energy readings were off the scale. Phase 1 testing begins in 6 hours, Captain Lee reported. If it works, we'll be able to reach Andromeda in less time than it used to take to cross a single sector. And if it doesn't work? Marcus asked. Then we go back to the drawing board and try again, Lee replied with a shrug. That's the human way, isn't it? Try, fail, learn, improve, try again, Sarah smiled. It's the galactic way now. Or at least it should be. As they watched the preparations for the test, Sarah's communicator chimed. She glanced at it and saw a message from Counselor Vrath, now impossibly ancient, but still serving the council he had once led. The message was brief. Ambassador Chen, this counselor wanted you to know that we have officially decommissioned the quarantine buoys around Sol System. The last physical reminder of humanity's exile is gone. It is overdue. The galaxy remembers what you were exiled for. I wanted to ensure it also remembers that you were wrong to exile. Well done on the Nexus project. This old Vraxian looks forward to seeing what impossible thing humanity attempts next. With respect and affection, Vrath. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. She composed a response. Counselor Vrath, thank you. But humanity didn't do this alone. Every impossible thing we've achieved has been with galactic cooperation. We're not trying to prove we're better than everyone else. We're trying to prove that everyone is better when we work together. My great-grandmother once told your predecessor that you would regret exiling us. I prefer to think you've all learned from it. As have we. The past is past. Let's build the future together. With respect and friendship, Sarah Chen. 6 hours later, the Nexus activated for the first time. The quantum singularity stabilized, space folded in ways that shouldn't be possible, and a gateway opened to a galaxy 2.5 million light-years away. It worked perfectly. Throughout Council space, on hundreds of worlds and thousands of stations, beings of every description celebrated. Humanity had proposed it. The Council had built it. Together, they had achieved something that would have been impossible for either alone. And somewhere, in the archives of galactic history, the record of humanity's exile was updated with a final note. The species that was once cast out for being too ambitious became the catalyst that transformed the galaxy. Their exile, intended as punishment, became the crucible that forged a new age. They returned not as conquerors but as partners, and in doing so, they taught the ancient council a lesson that should never be forgotten. That sometimes, the greatest danger is not in reaching too far, but in not reaching far enough. The Galactic Council had cast humanity out, fearing what their ambition and curiosity might bring. They thought they were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. They didn't realize they were protecting a dangerous species from their own restrictions. 50 years of exile transformed humanity from a junior member of galactic civilization into its unlikely savior. The very traits the Council had condemned: relentless curiosity, willingness to take risks, refusal to accept boundaries became exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The Council learned a hard lesson, that safety without growth is just slow death, that wisdom without innovation becomes stagnation, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. Humanity learned, too, that exile can be liberation, that restrictions can be overcome, and that proving someone wrong is far more satisfying than proving them right. In the end, the galaxy became something neither humanity nor the Council could have built alone. It became a civilization that valued both wisdom and innovation, both caution and courage, both the lessons of history and the possibilities of the future. The Council had cast humanity out and then pleaded for their return. But what returned wasn't the same species that had been exiled. It was something more, a humanity that had discovered its true potential, unconstrained by others' fears, and the galaxy was forever changed because of it.